Chapter 6, Ancient China. Section 1, Geography Shapes Ancient China. We're going to start off with some geographic features of China. So we're going to use our handy-dandy map here to label some of these places. But first of all, let's move this up here. Get my pencil. Okay, bordered on the east by the Yellow Sea. So the Yellow Sea is right there. And then you have the East China Sea, which is right there. And then you, of course, have the Pacific Ocean out here. China also has deserts. Out in the west here, you have the Taklamakan Desert. And up here in the northern part, you have the Gobi Desert. Then China has really large mountains. So down in this area right here are the Himalaya Mountains. And then you have the Pamir, which are up in this area up here. That's the Pamir. And then the Tian Shan are up here in this area. So looking at this map, you can tell that China is surrounded by physical features that kind of block it from outside forces. All these landforms acted as a barrier. They kept outside influences from coming into China. China was kind of this isolated area for hundreds and hundreds of years. Once again, if you look at this map, you notice all the different features. From the mountains all the way out in the west, to the seas to the east, to the deserts in the north. China is completely surrounded by physical features that kept those outside influences away. The center of Chinese civilization developed on the plains of two major rivers. The first one's called the Huanghe, which kind of winds around here and kind of does this kind of deal right through there. That's the Huanghe. It actually starts over here in the mountains and then winds its way into the Yellow Sea. Another name for the Huanghe is Yellow River. Now, let's get something straight about the Yellow River. It's not yellow because a bunch of Chinese people peed in it. It's called the Yellow River because of a type of dirt that's around the banks of the river called less. Let me spell it for you. L-O-E-S-S. Less is this yellow dirt. And when the rivers flow and it picks up the yellow dirt, it makes the river turn yellow. So that's why the Huanghe is called the Yellow River. The second river is the Chengjiang. So that kind of starts here, and it starts over here and moves that way toward the East China Sea. So right in this area right here is where the fertile lands of China are. This is called the North China Plain. You might see some of it up here as well. But that's because of those two rivers, the Huanghe and the Chengjiang. Chengjiang is also called the Yangtze River. Now, around 1766 BC, you will see a family known as the Shang who will start to take control of some of the cities in China. And they will establish the very first dynasty. A dynasty, as we learned in Egypt, is a ruling family. And this is the first dynasty in Chinese history, the Shang Dynasty. Now, they were known for using chariots to defend themselves against nomads from the north. There were constantly, and we'll learn this throughout Chinese history, attacks from the northern areas into China. And so the Shang would use the chariots to defend themselves against these nomads. In Shang culture, respect for one's parents and ancestors were very important. Family was closely tied to religion. The Chinese believed that the spirits of their ancestors could bring good fortune to them. And so the Shang kings oftentimes sacrificed animals in honor of their ancestors. And they usually paid respect to their father's ancestors in doing this particular tradition of sacrificing animals. Because in a Chinese family, the men they ruled the family. The Shang kings believed that they could receive messages from gods through oracle bones, or from their ancestors as well. An oracle bone, it's an animal bone, and they would write messages or scratch messages on the animal bones and then put them on a fire and heat it so that the bones start to crack. So you kind of see in this picture right here, this is an example of an oracle bone. And when that bone was placed on the fire, it started to crack, and you can see the little cracks there. Those all were some kind of message that the priest could translate to that particular person. Also developed by the Shang was a system of writing called the pictographs. You see that right here. They were used for a system of writing which had between 1,500 and 10,000 characters. Imagine having to learn a 10,000 character alphabet. Well, that's what the Chinese had to do. The next dynasty we'll talk about is the ZHOU dynasty. And the ZHOU kings were constantly attacking from the northwest. So from up in this area up here, they were attacking. And a ZHOU leader named Wu Wang finally defeated the Shang. And they take over. Now what we're going to start seeing, now that we have a second dynasty in place, is the rise and fall of particular dynasties in China. This is called the dynastic cycle. So if you look at this diagram over here, it kind of gives you an idea of what the dynastic cycle is. Number one, mandate of heaven. The people believe that new dynasty has God's approval. We'll talk about mandate of heaven in a second. Number two, the dynasty's power grows weaker. Number three, disasters such as floods, famine, and invasions occur. Number four, the people believe the dynasty has lost to God's approval. Number five, the dynasty is overthrown. Number six, a new dynasty restores peace and order, and it starts all over again. So that is what they call the dynastic cycle. Now the ZHOU kings believed trouble would come if they lost heaven's favor. So they justified the conquest of the Shang by saying that the last ruler of the Shang was really bad and evil. And so then the gods would give them the approval to take over. This is what we call the mandate of heaven. Now the whole idea of this is that the god is known as heaven. His name is T-I, otherwise known as heaven. And he's the one that puts the kings in place. So heaven is shining its rays down on this new ZHOU king right here, and that's why they received the mandate of heaven. Now, when another dynasty comes and conquers the ZHOU or whoever dynasty is in power, they believe that they lost the favor of the god T, and that's why someone else is now taken over. That is what the mandate of heaven is. The ZHOU did not have a strong government. They were kind of weak. The kings put people with family ties or other trusted people in charge of regions, and usually those people weren't very good. Local lords owed loyalty and military service to the king, but these local lords started becoming more powerful than the king, and these local lords started fighting amongst themselves as who was going to take control of the land. It was just kind of ignored that there was a king in place. And so the ZHOU won't last much longer, and they'll be overthrown. A constant theme in Chinese history is invasions by nomads or invasions by people from the north. And after 800 BC, invaders will come to China, and they'll weaken the empire, weaken the dynasty. And so warlords start fighting and claiming to be the new kings of China. And all these warlords start fighting with each other for control. This is a period that was called the Time of the Warring States. It began around 403 BC. That is the end of Section 1.